right, and here we go. All right, we are live. Good evening, everybody. It's Weather Center Live, Friday, January 26, 2024. Quite the interesting weather pattern we have to discuss tonight. Nothing too outlandish, nothing too freaky, scary. A little bit of possible severe weather for Alabama and maybe into the western extent of Georgia tomorrow, with another potential heavy snow threat for the northeast United States, particularly through New York State, Pennsylvania, Baltimore, and New Hampshire. So we'll see exactly what's going to happen up there. We'll take a look at that here momentarily. We have some very, very robust thunderstorm activity occurring and just training over the central Gulf of Mexico. If you guys look at this satellite shot here, this is our water vapor, courtesy of Tropical Tidbits. And you can see just that bundle of organized convection that just remains entrenched underneath our digging jet trough that has not moved anywhere. It's pretty crazy, pretty beautiful to see, honestly. And then there goes our first weak little system that got shotgunned right up out of our jet activity, left some snowfall residual effect over the Great Lakes, the Midwest, the Northeast. And then we have our next system just upstream with this jet max that's coming down south. You can see there goes our first one, and then here comes the second one right there. It's very neat how you can see these things kind of follow the path or follow the pattern in the upper levels with the jet when you're looking at your water vapor shot. So we're going to talk business. The first order of business, to say the least, is going to be this next upcoming wave that's developing over Texas, Oklahoma. It's been a very prevalent spot over the last couple of days. It's been the last couple of months. We've been having a lot of activity forming right over this general source region. We haven't had neither a Colorado or a definitive Texas low. I guess you could say that's more of a Texas low regime forming over the panhandle. We've typically been seeing them cyclogenicize or go cyclogenetic, develop over the Oklahoma-Texas panhandle and then shoot off to the east and then the northeast. That's been very trademark for this time of year. We haven't seen too many Colorado or Northern Rocky lows actually escape over the plains and come down like so. They've all originated over the south and especially the lower latitudes of southern Texas, Mexico, and gone screaming across the Gulf of Mexico, even though we haven't seen that in approaching 2 months now. We haven't seen that since early December. That was the last time we had something come out of the Gulf of Mexico supported by our El Nino subtropical jet. And we haven't seen anything since. It's been very boring, to tell you the truth. It's been very quiet here in Central Florida. Been very warm and muggy over the last few days. We got the warm-up that we were anticipating, and it was very, very humid today. I stepped outside just to throw the trash away, and I could immediately feel that 80, 90, 100% humidity in the air. The temperatures were definitely in the mid to upper 70s. It was feeling very spring-like, that's for sure. And I'm still wondering if we're going to get another shot of winter down here in Florida. The southeast will definitely feel winter again, and they'll likely feel some of the effects of the polar air that's being pulled in behind this new shortwave / low pressure center that's undergoing development over Texas, Oklahoma now. But nothing nearly as extreme as we saw with our first Arctic plunge not too long ago and the second one thereafter. And truthfully, the pattern is very weird. It's very wonky, and I don't know how some of these channels and other weather sources out there still have the audacity to try to say, major this, feet of this, explosive this, because really we just don't have that going on. And our models have been swinging and missing quite frequently over the last 5 to 7 days now. It's been very disappointing, to tell you the truth. I even shared on my Instagram, not on my TikTok, thankfully. I'm glad I didn't, but I shared on my Instagram, I shared on my X. I've been talking about it on YouTube here, that our jet was going to amplify as we get into early February, and it will. We're still going to see some very good activity over the Rockies, especially the Four Corners, the Intermountain West, maybe along the Front Range of Wyoming, Colorado, all the way up into Montana with our next system, but it's been very dorked up. The models really just I don't know if they're struggling with the way the jet is trying to orient itself and with all this extreme jet energy that's going to be racing across the Pacific, but they're being very troublesome, and we'll get into that here now. We'll start looking at this. I don't need this open anymore. There we go. So we'll start off with the GFS. We'll go 18 Zulu because 12 and 18s. Actually, no, we'll go 12Z. We'll use the more reliable run. We're using the CMC and the Euro at 12 Zulu. So we'll use the 12Z GFS just to be as reliable and accurate as we possibly can using a live hot model run as opposed to a continuity run. But before we get any further, I'm trying not to sneeze. Woo! Before we get any further, let's say hello to a few folks. Brooke Ward, hello there. Super Charas, welcome in. Zenful first, message retracted, but I do see hello there, lovely people down the road. Joseph Parton, good evening. Judy, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Sam Astapasta, hey, good to see you as always, as well as Tour Bus Ronnie, thank you very much for joining us tonight. It looks like we're going to have an intimate crowd. Usually folks who are going to join the stream would have been here by now, and you know what? That's okay. I'll tell you guys right now, before we get too heavy into the stream, next week, if all goes well, tomorrow and Sunday, we will finally, and I mean finally, I've said it before, I've apologized before, but I'm just coming out and throwing the disclaimer in the air, putting it out in the open. We will be back to our regularly scheduled programming. The only difference is it might not be 6 p.m. updates, or 6 p.m. uploads, I should say. What I'm looking at doing, April Brooks, welcome in. There's another regular. Good to see you. What I'm looking at doing, however, is taking advantage of my work from home position and kind of switching up the way I produce content right now to go back to prioritizing my YouTube channel, especially as we get closer and closer to springtime, tornado season of March, April, and then May, where we could possibly start seeing our sea breeze activity kicking off big time here in the Central Florida Peninsula once El Nino finally dies out. And I'm trying... there it is. Just trying so hard to hold that in. Malachi, welcome in. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. So what I'm thinking of doing is possibly I'm going to be bringing a lot of my old gym equipment that I had at a studio in Kissimmee back home. So I'll have my squat rack, I'll have my hip thruster, I'll have my barbells, my landmine, my plates, etc., everything. And honestly, the last few days, wow, my allergies. The last few days I've been struggling to get in the gym. It's been very difficult in the morning. The mornings have been very busy, very hectic. Thank you, Judy. And Daniel, no problem. Thank you very much for joining us. Oh, no, Zenful, it's fine. I'm doing okay. It's just my nose. It's itchy. That's all. That's it. Anyways, in summary, I'm probably going to be doing earlier afternoon uploads instead of actually uploading at 6 p.m. because my old regimen used to be I would try to film on my lunch break. I had 30 minutes to try to cram a video into that bad boy. And I would continue to edit as I went throughout the rest of the day, but my work schedule is very crazy right now. And in fact, with Advent Health, we just opened up to what's called our multi-state division. So I'm going to be servicing patients from the up north and the Midwest, the Great Lakes, down in the South, down in the Southeast, and so on and so forth. So I need as much mental brain power as possible to get through a shift. So long story short, look out for future updates, but they may be sometime between the 2:30, 3 o'clock time frame, maybe a little earlier than that, maybe a little later than that. We'll try to narrow it down as we go through time, but we're going to be coming back with the uploads. I can promise you guys that. So this is our 12 Zulu. Sheesh. Wow. Okay. This is our 12 Zulu GFS. We're going to talk about this a little bit, and actually I should have probably pulled up Storm Prediction Center because we do have an area of possible severe level 2 risk for a majority of Alabama and into the western panhandle of Florida. Georgia was once highlighted. They have definitely dropped it back down to a more marginal risk, a level 1 risk. We'll look at those parameters here in a little bit, but that's our next little nor'easter system. Not looking all that impressive. You know, and I've been seeing a lot of folks already mentioning, you know, all sorts of crazy stuff with this, and this is not nearly as strong as we've seen before, and it doesn't look like it's going to start to develop really strong or really get any kind of intensity characteristics to it until it's well off the northeast coastline, and by then we're already far enough away from our heavy snow band and our rainfall post-cold front that we're really not going to see a whole lot of stuff associated with it. Daniel Lawson, wow, look at that. Advent Health saved my grandma's life. That's very good to hear. I'm glad to hear that they helped her and, you know, we saved a life. It's nice to be affiliated with a company like that, a name. So as you guys can see, we're going to have a very strange Arctic-supported clipper system, or I should say polar-supported system, dip south out of Ontario and Manitoba and hit the Great Lakes from the north. We're not used to seeing that. At least this winter time, we haven't been used to seeing that. It's coming out of the north. I'm sure a lot of people are going to hype that bad boy up too, especially since it wants to dive bomb all the way down towards the southeast before picking up some more jet support, a shortwave trough at 500 millibars, and kick off some more cyclogenesis off the Hatteras coastline, becoming a trademark Hatteras low before exiting out into the Atlantic. So a lot of our wintry threats, for those of you wondering, and I had mentioned this in previous live streams as well, our winter conditions are just going to stay up in this area. They're really not going to affect a whole lot of folks here in the rest of the lower 48 until we get into the latter parts of, or I should say the very tail end of January into the first week, I should say weekend into the first week of February. Yeah, go ahead. Of course you can. Ask a quick question. Go for it. Keep in mind the upcoming 2024 severe weather tornado season is only a month and a half away, which begins on March 1st. Yep, we were just mentioning that earlier, just before we started the live stream, or I should say just before you joined the live stream, April, we had mentioned that. We want to start amping up our coverage on this channel again before we get into tornado season. Particularly April and May have been on a lot of people's radars. And then as you continue this through time, you can see we are seeing some very benign weather across a large majority of the country, at least for a little while. You know, I say benign, and I know obviously we have some showers and possible snowfall up there in the mid-Atlantic getting into the northeast, but that's nothing of any major concern, not a huge issue. I don't anticipate making any coverage on that, and if I do, I'm going to mention it for all of 3 seconds and be like, yep, and rain and snow, keep moving. Then you see we have a very amplified setup pushing in to the western United States. And I already know with the way the thickness is stacked, a lot of folks are going to think this could be our next Arctic plunge, and it's definitely not. It is definitely not. And I've even been obsessing at the 500 millibar isotherms and the heights at 500 millibars to see exactly what jet is coming down. And it is definitely the polar jet, the polar front jet, and it's going to be very, very discombobulated. If you look already, the thickness lines tell the whole story. So here is one portion of the polar front jet troughing south, supporting our baroclinic system off the northeast mid-Atlantic coast. We have this gigantic blocking ridge that's extending up through even central Canada at this point. That's where the red isotherms are. If you guys look, you have red isotherms. There's our 570 line, 564 line, 558 line, and then notice how the isotherms suddenly go, or the thickness lines suddenly do this. They are way, way pulled up to the north thanks to a large blocking ridge at 500 and 300 millibars. And then let me clear the ink. And if you look, our cold trough is coming in at a very weird but sharp negative angle. It's angled like this. It is extremely, extremely discombobulated, almost upside down to an extent. Do you know why Barbados is having rain 24/7, basically every one day still and raining? It's still, we can go and take a look down there in a moment. Carmen, hello there, and Weather Family. Sorry I can't stay, but wanted to be sure to say hello, and I hope everyone is doing well. I'll try to play catch-up this weekend. Miss you all. We do miss you too, Carmen. I've been thinking about you. I haven't seen you and a number of others who typically tune in for the streams joining us recently. I don't know if it's because they've officially phased the channel out and they've officially turned off their YouTubes or they've gone elsewhere. But you and amongst a number of other folks who I usually see in the streams have just not been joining us. So it's nice to see you pop in and say hello. Hope all is well with you as well, for sure, especially going in and out of the cold and the hot weather all the time the way we have been. And so, and yes, by the way, yep, I knew it. They're the emojis. I have it. It's right here. Rocking and rolling, staying hydrated. It's the way I keep my eyes from bugging out before the end of the day. And as you can see, this system has gone through so many different iterations because of how weird our pattern looks. Our pattern just looks disgusting, and I don't like it. It's very bizarre. It's going to be very difficult to analyze, and still, even right now, it's all sorts of lopsided. If you look, we actually have warmer air out here, and we have colder air coming in down to the south of it, like this. So we have cold air here. We have cooler but warmer thicknesses up and through here, and our ridge has now been completely cut off like so, and we're getting ready to have a high pressure come down to the south. It's very bizarre. CWTDF, welcome in. Good to see you. Thank you very much for joining us tonight on this lovely Friday evening. And it gets even better than that. As you take this even further through time, you can see that we get, we kind of even the pattern out. We get a little more zonal. And then the GFS thinks we're going to get another weak system, another weak system, another weak system. And there's really nothing. I mean, I'm telling you guys, there's nothing out there. There's nothing out there. Now, this is getting into February 11th. Obviously, we're in La La Land, and this is going to change daily like it has been. And if not run to run, it's going to change on a regular basis. But if you notice, we don't really have very, very intense systems out there. They're very broad, very weak. This one, it looks impressive because it's colliding with the higher terrain features, so you're getting a lot of interesting orientations with your isobars and your isotherms and your thickness lines. But 995 millibars, no big deal. We don't really have a favorable setup to get a lot of return flow out of the south. Look at this. We have a high pressure up here. So that high pressure is just circulating and regurgitating already cool, if not cold air, and putting it back up to the north. No real significant warm sector there. And then we have the wind flow opposing off of this low pressure here. So there's no chance of getting a lot of warm air advection with this. So these systems, once they get into the plains, are really not going to do much. They're going to be fairly weak in nature. It's just going to be more of a rain event. More rain. And as you can see, even as they wander out of the Four Corners Rockies, they just kind of dissipate. They wash out and they don't become anything. We have a very, very large high pressure to the north of us that's kind of suppressing everything and driving them off to the east-southeast like this, and they're dying. There's really not a lot of jet support down there because of how much blocking we have up in the upper levels. It's kind of awkward and bizarre that the severe weather for tomorrow blows up so quickly and then quickly dies out by time it gets to the Carolinas. Oh, yeah, it's just because we're going to have a very short stint of very good parameters down there as that system really tries to get going, and then it's just going to fizzle. That squall line's going to fizzle. And I really don't think we're going to get a lot of severe weather out of it. We might get some damaging winds, some straight line winds out of that stuff, but I'm really not looking at much of anything else outside of that. European model, verifying very well run to run. It still looks to depict much of the same. And you can see even the Euro is going even more quiet than what the GFS was thinking. The Euro thinks as of Monday next week, we might have some lingering snowfall up in the northeast, but the rest, like 90% of the United States, is going to be just done, quiet, nothing. And I can go slowly through it. Here's the middle of the day on Monday. Almost everybody is done. There's nothing out there. As we go through Tuesday, there's really nothing out there. We might get some lake effect snow with that very weak system that dips south out of Canada, but there's really nothing out there unless you live windward side of the Cascades up there in the Pacific Northwest, maybe the Bay Area of Northern California. These areas here are going to see that atmospheric river setup, so we would have some maybe decent shot at seeing some enhanced shower and thunderstorm activity, or I should say just consistent rainfall activity. Some very light snow possible with that very weak system that's not even stamped as a low pressure system anymore according to the Euro. But again, this is now January 31st, and then into my birthday, we are very quiet. Very quiet. We get a Hatteras low system that does develop, but it's not going to be anything more than a weather player for Bermuda. No one else is really going to get a whole lot of effects from it. We're still pretty quiet across the board. We're finally starting to see that trough axis dig in out west, and we're going to see our rain and snow chances, especially over the higher terrain features, start to go up. But again, this is February 1st, very quiet. And then finally, as we get into February 3rd and 4th, we finally get to see these systems really roping out and moving around in that cold sector of the jet that's just going to kind of bend this way. It's going to kind of whiplash like this as it comes in, and then it's going to get hung up. And that's why those perturbations embedded within it, the shortwave troughs at 500 millibars, these surface features trying to be supported by those upper level features, are really not going to do very much. So, I don't know, guys. And then you come here, you come out this way, and I know this is very far out, so the Euro tends to broad brush it. We do have this little breakaway piece of energy that tries to move through us on February 4th, and the CMC does a great job of highlighting that as well. The CMC is on the same path or the same track mindset of the Euro. And, I mean, it's just anybody's best guess right now, to tell you the truth, is what I'm kind of trying to communicate here. It looks like these systems are going to keep coming through, but we're in a very dynamic pattern of winter, I guess you could say. Maybe this is just the reload, and right now Mother Nature is reloading her double-barrel shotgun for our next major Arctic plunge. But as we stand right now, there's not a whole lot going out there, and at least until we get past my birthday into the first weekend of February will we finally know exactly what each of these waves are going to do. But as of right now, it just doesn't seem like there's a hell of a lot going on, and that's why I'm still dumbfounded why I'm reading the videos and the posts still coming out. The weather's getting wild. This is insane. And it's like, well, yeah, it's getting a little weird in the upper levels because our jets are doing something funky, but I would not want to make videos on this, to tell you the truth. If I made a video on this and I tried to express any sort of concern, at least as we stand right now, outside of what's going to happen over the next 24 to 36 hours, I would expect even you guys who support the page to come after me and say, you're hyping just to have something to talk about, because there really is not much out there. You come over here, and this is exactly why we have a very diffuse jet over the United States, and it's going to remain that way for quite some time. Very weak. There's really not a lot of jet energy anywhere. If you look all through here, we don't have anything. The entire lower 48 outside of Florida and our good old subtropical jet, we really just don't have much. A lot of our major polar front jet energy is being pushed up to the north, kind of like we identified on the GFS earlier with the thickness lines. You can see that ridge just surging all the way up into the northern Canadian territories, almost into the poles, the Arctic Circle almost to an extent up there. And then it won't be until we finally get closer to the middle parts of February we get some, even then, looking at this chart, 300 hours out, we still don't have a heck of a lot of action. We might see a little bit of development with that jet max, that jet finger that digs in and begins to interact with this very, very strong, robust low-latitude jet, I should say. But we're in a very quiet pattern right now. And I agree, Daniel. It seems like we're in hibernation. Like winter is kind of taking a break. Like I said, it's almost like Mother Nature and the atmosphere are sitting back and sipping coffee, just kind of wondering what their next move is going to be. Real quick, we'll go out to the Caribbean to kind of take a look at what's going on in Barbados. I have not really been watching the tropics too much. Very little, I should say. I mean, I still look at it every now and again. And it looks like for you guys out there in Barbados, you're probably just having daytime thunderstorms firing along this very, very weak area of confluent flow out there. It looks like there is the tail end of a very, very, very weak frontal appendage. There's this frontal system right in through here. It's very hard to see, but it's there. You can definitely see. You can see the wind flow coming down right there, trying to reinforce it, and then we end up going into that stationary boundary with the prevailing easterlies coming this way, and then you could see that upper-level jet activity screaming out of the southwest like so. So it looks like daytime thunderstorms are the name of the game out there. We probably have to look at radar to kind of see what's going on out there, because there's jack of nil on satellite. No big weather features. It is very quiet. I have a very weak little cyclonic curvature right there moving along that frontal band, if you could even call it that, but that's really it. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, the whole Caribbean area, the whole Caribbean AOR has been very quiet for a while now. Like there's just look at that. There's just nothing really going on out there. Everybody's kind of just sitting with their thumb up their butt. Nope. Wanted to find a way to work that into it, but work that into the conversation. But yeah, there's just really not much happening anywhere. And I remember we used to talk heavily about the Caribbean, Central America, South America, and there's just not a zilch. We are in a very quiet pattern. Very quiet pattern. Yeah, and how close are we? Welcome in. I just spent some time talking about it, but it really does not look all that impressive. We're going to have look at that. You can see it. It's going to be a very angulated jet, and it's going to get stuck. And it's going to be kind of a Rex block-ish kind of pattern for a while, a giant dome of warmer air entrenched over Canada, and these systems are just going to get blocked and move down to the south. But because of that big old ridge, we're not going to see a whole lot of strengthening with this. Our jets are going to stay very weak over the United States. And I bet if we were to switch over to our 300 millibars, we would verify this and take a look at the wind flow. And you look at that gigantic, weird anticyclone that kind of breaks away. Yeah, look at that. We go full zonal like so, west to east over the south. There's our pronounced jet energy. But then we have just this gigantic dome of anticyclonic curvature, and it's just going to help to impede a lot of any kind of substantial development. This is not a very favorable environment for good cyclogenesis of our baroclinic synoptic scale features. Let's appreciate the quiet. She's going to blast us bad after this. But yeah, I have a feeling supercharged. You're right, for sure. Malachi, we'll talk to you very soon. Thank you very much for joining us. I do think that once we get into the middle parts of February, I'm thinking sometime around Valentine's Day. I think sometime around Valentine's Day, especially with this long hiatus, we kind of have to extrapolate the pattern a little bit, because where there is a lull, there is always some chaos happening upstream. So I'd imagine if we continue to see this weird pattern like this all the way out until, we'll say, according to the European model, until the 5th of February, and it is the 26th currently, and we've been quiet for about, we'll say 3 to 4 days now. We haven't really had much going on, so that's going to be a total of about 10 to 12, maybe 14 days, 2 weeks of just, decent weather. I would say after this, if we fast forward, probably sometime around Valentine's Day, if not approaching my grandmother and my dad's birthday on the 20th, we'll probably have some big stuff really flaring up on our models, and we'll really start to kick back into the final bout of wintertime. I think that's exactly how this winter is going to go. We're very mild right now, and I think we're going to finally have one last big hoorah, not only of El Nino, but also of our winter season before we slowly start to exit El Nino, and we also begin to switch into our transition season, which, like April has already alluded to, once we hit that transitional season point, that's when the tornado risk and our daytime garden variety thunderstorms are going to start to ramp back up again. We're going to see more of that subtropical air coming to the north. Our buoyancy is going to start to come back again. And anytime we get those residual frontal boundaries or upper troughs that come through the south, that's what's really going to help to kick off some very severe weather. Whoop, excuse me. Super Charas, there we go. We're going to have lots of birthdays, so we'll see exactly what happens. We could have some, whatchamacallit stuff going on. Some big weather players coming in towards the back end of middle part. I'm thinking middle part. My gut is telling me around Valentine's Day we'll have to watch. That's what my gut instinct tells me. Realistically, it could be towards the back end of February and into March. So we'll see. And yeah, I agree. How close are we? That's probably why the jet is looking so crazy on these charts in the long run, because it does look like we're slightly seeing a bit of a spike in our El Nino or Enzo regions out there. In terms of our severe weather out there, it looks like we could have a decent shot in Alabama for the most part. You can see what we're looking at here is actually our moisture flux. We don't look at this enough, and I've been doing a lot of extra homework in the background to kind of cover my bases for when severe weather season comes in. And honestly, we've been neglecting looking at our moist air advection, a lot of our moisture out there in the environment. Jesus. And that's why we're coming in and looking at our moisture flux. And essentially all this means, moisture flux is a very fancy way of saying where the moisture is likely to kind of convene and congregate. Milagros, welcome in. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. We're already halfway through the stream. We're kind of blasting through it tonight. So you can see we have really good moisture flux or moist air advection occurring over the southern tip of Mississippi, Alabama, and the Florida Panhandle, and right up in through here along the leading edge of our system, which is exactly where SPC has our area highlighted currently. If we switch over to our dew points, you can see the dew points really begin to spike right there. Right there. Very good convergence. Very good lifted index values as well. You guys can't see them. They're very tiny. But our lifted index values go from -2 to -3 to -4 and some -6 values just off the coastline there. And then they start to dwindle as you get a little bit further into Georgia and especially the Carolinas. We still have that cold air dammed up against the lee of the Appalachians, so we're really not seeing a whole lot of advection up through there. So I do think our main area of possible intense activity, if there is any, is going to be confined to this general spot here. What was I going to pull up here? Oh, and then, of course, the snowfall. We got to go through our snowfall because I know everyone's going to be hyping up about the snow. We got to freak out. So, freak out! That's what I should be playing with all these. I should make a compilation of all these folks panicking. In fact, I kind of want to go and look on my YouTube right now real quick just to see if we have any hype surfacing as we end the day. Nope, nothing right now. I'm surprised, but then again, I also turned off all my recommendations and unsubbed from a few people that I just really didn't want to keep seeing uproar and hubbub from. I mean, even right now, looking at what we're looking at here, Yes, are you guys looking at it? Would you just look at it? Just look at it. What we are seeing here is going to be our total hourly snowfall with this next storm system that's going to come through, and the GFS is not giving us a very big vote of confidence. You can see as we go through Monday and into the earliest portions of Tuesday, we're looking at maybe total accumulation, like piling up on the ground. We could see between 1.5 to 2.5 inches. And that's just actual collecting snowfall. We'll probably see some more, but we won't really see a whole lot of it stick. And thankfully, it looks like we were initially predicting a possible freezing rain setup along the lee of the Appalachians through Virginia, West Virginia, getting into the Delaware, Maryland area, just to the south of Connecticut there as well. where we could have possibly seen a little bit of freezing rain, but according to the hourly GFS, that situation has completely died. There's really no ample, probability of seeing it anymore. We'll have to look at the other longer or the closer range models once we get within the window a little bit more so. And then here's our NAM 1 hour snowfall. This is actual hourly snowfall, not just 1 hour accumulations. And you guys can kind of see that we're not going to see a very, very good amount of snowfall with this system. This is the NAM now. And this is why I love to use models like this, because folks will show you a total accumulation. And I know I've echoed that a bunch of times before, but it's still a huge gripe of mine. It pisses me off that people will use a total snowfall chart. If I go from here to here, 75 inches of snow, that is not snow forecasting. In fact, I've even deep dived into some of my old snow forecasting rules of thumb and come to look at what National Weather Service, Climate Prediction Center, Weather Prediction Center, what my actual Air Force and Naval career development guides and training material suggests is to properly forecast snow. You don't even want to look at your snow totals. You want to look at your skew T soundings first. Then you want to look at your thickness values, and you want to start at your 1,000 to 500 thickness and then go down to your 850 and 700, and then go from your 1,000 to 850. And then finally, you could look at maybe hourly and 6 hourly products to see where your heaviest snow band is likely to be. But you also want to use your height products, your thickness products, your isotherms at 850, 700, and 500 to determine where your heaviest snow band is likely to be. And looking at all that stuff, I could completely go, gung-ho if I wanted to on all these weather channels and be like, you don't know what you're talking about, you don't know what you're talking about, you don't know what you're talking about, you don't know what you're talking about. That's not forecasting, that's definitely not forecasting, that's definitely not forecasting, because no one out there is doing anything, actually remotely like forecasting. So it goes without saying, we're really not seeing a whole lot of snowfall with this. Maybe, general thinking, 1 to 3 inches max, with some very, very localized instances of higher accumulation at best. If we switch back over to our GFS and we go to the actual Northeast United States and we turn on our 24-hour snowfall product, you can see as we go through time, there are areas likely to see just a little bit more accumulation. They're very localized. If you notice, there's a cluster here, clusters here, approaching, the 4 to 5 inch threshold. Nothing much outside of that, though. So in 24 hours, it looks like the total amount we could see from this storm system is about 6 inches in some very, very small areas, different counties. Not a blanketing effect. And see the difference here, guys? And this is exactly why I get mad. I genuinely do. It makes my blood boil. It grinds my gears that if you look at this does not look like much. Pennsylvania, New York, maybe you could see a little bit of a shutdown for school scenario. That's about it. But then watch this. If I go all the way back to the beginning and I turn on our total snow, look at that. Now watch this. See how that looks a lot more good? I mean, even this honestly doesn't look that impressive, but you kind of get the picture here. If I were to start us off on a total snow and that's it, it would be more of a, whoa, look at that, 8 inches of snow now for New Hampshire and Baltimore. That's crazy. Or no, Vermont, excuse me. I keep saying Baltimore. That's Vermont up there. And same thing if I were to just drag this all the way to the end. Look at that. Now, if we're all the way out to February 11th, yes, now we're getting into the 2 feet of snow accumulation. And mind you, this also includes sleet. It's not just snowfall. So again, if you're looking at other weather models out there or weather channels out there and they only show you the total snowfall, they're wrong and they're falsely advertising that. They're not forecasting it. And it's getting to the point now where I'm not afraid to say that. They're not doing it right whatsoever. And they're probably, I'm going to say it, they're probably terrible at snow forecasting. I probably don't even know where to start, to tell you the truth. And I'm not here trying to make a case that I'm an expert at snow forecasting. Do I have a lot of experience? Yes. Was I always that great at predicting snow? No. I'm openly going to admit that. But at the same time, at least I know where to start and actually provide you guys with a forecast as opposed to, yep, looks like 33 inches right here. 33 inches, guys. Look at that. And then the 34 inch right here, that's going to be the title of my video. 34 inches possible for the Northeast with this winter storm. That's not forecasting. Anybody can pick a number. I could literally go outside and randomly conjure up a number in my mind and say, that's what I'm making my video on today. So, I mean, that's kind of about it. It's kind of about it. We could possibly see some very, very good snow totals over the Rockies in the Four Corners. If I switch over to our, Western U.S., you look at these snow totals for the uppermost mountain peaks, and we are getting up there. And I'm not going to name drop this person. I'm not going to name drop him, but I did see a very, very clickbaity title today. I definitely did. Very clickbait. Very clickbait. Multiple feet of snow are coming. And I knew immediately as soon as I saw that video, I'm like, yeah, no, that's extreme hype, extreme clickbait. You're just trying to get the clicks on your video. And I mean, it's probably working, but the only place we're getting extreme snowfall like that is you can see her over the Sierra Nevadas. That's it. Over the Cascades. That's it. Over the Intermountain West and the Front Range of the Rockies, over the Mogollon Rim of Arizona. That's it. We're not getting feet of snow down at ground level where a lot of us can see it. You can see it if you drive up the mountains, absolutely, but are we getting, major snow in Phoenix, Arizona? Are we getting major snow in Sacramento? Are we getting major snow in Spokane, Washington, or over at Hill Air Force Base in Idaho? Probably not. So, when I see things like that, it's a complete fallacy. It's a complete fallacy. So this is what we have to look forward to. It looks like Nebraska could get a little sporty with the snowfall. But then again, remember, this is total snowfall all the way out to February 11th. So this is not in one sitting. That's a total accumulation of over 10, 14 days. So be very leery who you watch out there, because I'll openly admit, too, when I do scroll through some of these videos to see if anybody's calling out anybody out there, I do see recurring viewers on this channel also commenting and more or less just egging them on. And it's like, come on, guys. I'm trying. I'm trying to, throw a little bit of educational pizzazz in there as I can and, get you to open the eyes a little bit. But as soon as you get pulled in by that clickbait, it's, oh, shoot, look at this. Just like I'm starting to see a lot more of the La Nina hurricane videos popping up. They're coming up left and right now. La Nina is coming. Hurricanes on the horizon. And it's like, okay, I don't know who started this train, but we're getting a little excited now. And I'm still waiting until we get to March, April, and especially May to start blasting out religious tropical updates. We've talked about it in the live streams, but, I don't really consider that deep diving into it because we're just having a discussion. We're having a conversation. I'm not making full-fledged videos solely on that just yet. We will, and I would like to start putting out on a month-to-month, if not twice-a-month basis, a full-fledged tropical update to fully examine what it is that I'm looking at and kind of discuss what it is that I've been seeing from other sources. Scrooge McDuck, I do agree. We probably will see at least one more flash of winter. A flash winter effect is what I'll call it instead of flash flood. We'll get a flash winter effect down here. I'm thinking middle parts of February. I was thinking around Valentine's Day. We'll see another plunge. I'm sure. How close are we? I'm sure. And Zenful, I absolutely agree. I'm not a big fan of clickbait either, clearly. You guys have heard my hot tirades. But all right, everybody, we're going to go ahead and start wrapping up the live stream. We kept it very short and sweet, not a whole lot to talk about, so, we're going to go ahead and start wrapping up, saying goodbye, and we'll talk again on Monday, where we'll hopefully have everything situated. I'll be in a new regiment, a new schedule, and we can start doing some actual updates here on the channel as well, and I'm actually excited for that, too. Even if the views are because I'm not hyping anything, I'm still going to be excited to start pushing out good content again. And JJ614, to answer your question with what I'd mentioned on Wednesday with my live stream, we briefly touched on the tropics. I'm going to start putting out tropical updates on May 1st. Once we hit May 1st, I'm going to start actively, throughout my video segments and on my live streams, I'm going to start looking at the tropics because I do think that there is a good chance, a very decent chance, actually, that we could get some early season activity, especially with some of these other reputable sources mentioning we could see a mimicry of 2004, 2005, 2007, 2020, 2018, and so on. Each one of those years, we had at least one named storm middle to latter half of May. 2020, we had 3 named storms in May. So I would say there is I'd say we're at like a 30-40% shot at seeing at least one named storm in May. Last year, during our El Nino season, we had a May storm. It really organized on the very first day of June, but it was there very end of May. So I'm going to start making tropical update videos at least once a week maybe in May, if not twice a week, depending on how much of a El Nino washout we get and how much of a neutral La Nina buildup we have as we roll through May. So I do think we have a very good possibility of seeing early season activity, especially if the waters do ramp up and get very hot as we get into May. The polar vortex is almost non-existent right now. I'm not even too sure. I haven't been paying attention to it. We can go try to find it right now by looking at the northern hemisphere. Let's see. So it looks like the polar vortex, if you could even call it that, is right up in this channel between northern Canada and Greenland. So it's way up there. Definitely way up there, very retreated. We're not going to get a whole lot of amplitude from it or any kind of funneling of major cold air just yet. But as I mentioned, take a look at what we have out there. We have a very strong Aleutian low. I don't know why my pen got very big. We have a very strong Aleutian low and some very strong baroclinic systems, or I should say semi-permanent pressure systems, just upstream of us out over the Pacific Ocean headed towards Europe and Asia. So through time, they're going to slowly work their way across. You can see we just left this very aggressive pattern right there. There's all our cold air surging down over, it looks like the Middle East, the western portions of Europe getting into Asia. And right now we're in a zonal pattern. We're in a very weak, unmeridional pattern. So, we have to circulate around. This is our 5-wave chart. So as these things move like clockwork through the northern hemisphere, what goes around comes around. It's the perfect way to kind of end the live stream. What goes around comes around. And it's kind of the same way I look at life. We have our troughs, our low points, and then we have the ridges. But unfortunately, it's the nature of the beast. We always have our ridge and our calm weather, and the next thing you know, it's got to go downhill again. It's just the way of life. It's the way of the weather sphere. But I agree with you. How close are we? Thank you all very much for watching tonight. We're going to go ahead and wrap up. I actually haven't had dinner yet either. It's been that busy. So I'm going to go ahead and get that prepped up. But thank you very much to everybody who tuned in this evening. We had a very small, intimate group as expected. And Lord willing, the channel can start to pick up some momentum once again. Once I begin to start putting out more religious content. And I don't mean religious as in, hallelujah, as much as I'd love to do that. But I just mean more routine again. I definitely want to get more into the routine of maybe just twice a week putting out a hard segment, and we can continue our 3 times a week live streams just to kind of supplement views and kind of get a little more of the algorithm on our side. So we will see. We will see. But Six Thick Thistle Sticks, thank you very much for joining. Hello there, but we were just wrapping up, so unfortunately, I'm going to have to ask you to hit that replay button, or if you have any questions, drop them in the comments section below. If you're from TikTok or on another social media platform, feel free to leave me a comment or a message on there. I always get back to everybody, but yeah, guys, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Friday evening, and I hope you have a spectacular weekend for those of you who are not experiencing what's going to kick off here with our winter storm and potential nor'easter system in the next 24 hours. And we'll be watching tomorrow. We may go live if we get some significant weather really kicking off in Alabama, and you can guarantee we're going to have updates on Instagram and on the talk. So if you guys are followers on there, definitely tune in. And if you are not followers, I highly encourage you to follow along. Because they're a little bit easier to pump out updates on a repetitive basis than coming on here and going live or, fully editing a video. A 1-2 minute video is a lot easier to put together than a 15-minute video, if you guys know what I mean. All right, so again, thank you kindly for watching, and I do really appreciate all of your continued support, the few of you who tune in even on our slower days. It means a lot, trust me. It's nice to know that there are still some people out there watching, even though I've kind of backed off on my content, and I haven't been as structured or organized as I probably should be, but we're going to fix that. I can promise you that. All right, guys? We'll talk to you very soon, and until next time, this is Weather Center Nazario, signing out.